Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today I've got a story for you that's so wild, so heartwarming, you might not believe it at first. But stick with me, because this one's a journey. It's about a sweet old grandma, a ridiculously cold winter, and a group of unexpected visitors that would change her life forever. Our story begins in a small, remote cabin nestled deep in the snow-covered mountains. Living there all alone was an elderly woman named Ilara. Ilara was known throughout the nearby village for her kindness. She had a heart as warm as the crackling fire in her hearth, and she'd never turn away a soul in need, whether it was a lost traveler or a stray animal. This particular winter was brutal. The news called it a once-in-century blizzard. Snow fell relentlessly, burying everything in a thick white blanket. The wind howled like a hungry wolf, and the temperatures dropped to bone-chilling lows. Alara was used to harsh winters, but even she felt a shiver of unease. She had stocked up on firewood and food, her little cabin a tiny beacon of warmth against the raging storm. One evening, as the blizzard reached its peak, Alara heard a strange sound outside her door. It wasn't the wind, and it wasn't a branch falling. It was a low, mournful rumble, followed by a gentle, almost hesitant knock. Peeking through her frosted window, Ilara's eyes widened. Standing on her porch, shivering in the swirling snow, were creatures she had only read about in old folklore books. They were massive, covered in thick, matted fur, with large, soulful eyes that looked desperate. There wasn't just one or two. It looked like a whole family, a tribe of at least 30 of them. Bigfoots now. Anyone else might have screamed, bolted the door, and hidden under the bed. But Ilara wasn't anyone else. She saw not monsters, but creatures suffering in the cold. Their powerful frames were hunched over, and she could see the frost clinging to their fur. Without a second thought, her compassionate heart took over. She unlatched the door and swung it open. The largest of the creatures, who seemed to be the leader, looked at her, his big, intelligent eyes filled with a silent plea. Ilara just smiled gently and gestured for them to come inside. One by one, they carefully ducked under the low doorframe and filed into her small cabin. They were incredibly respectful, moving with a surprising grace, trying their best not to knock anything over in the cramped space. The air was soon filled with the damp, earthy smell of the forest and wet fur, but Alara didn't mind. She saw them huddle together, their shivers slowly subsiding in the warmth of her home. She stoked the fire, adding more logs until it roared back to life, casting a warm, golden glow across the room. She then went to her pantry and brought out all the bread, stew, and dried fruits she had. It wasn't much for such a large group, but it was all she had to offer. She placed the food on the floor, and the creatures ate quietly and gratefully, sharing the meager meal amongst themselves. The little ones, the young Bigfoots, looked at her with wide, curious eyes. As the night wore on, the storm raged outside, but inside the tiny cabin, a strange and peaceful silence settled. The gentle giants curled up on the floor, their deep, rumbling breaths filling the room like a soft purr. Ilara, wrapped in her quilt by the fire, watched over her unusual guests. She felt no fear, only a profound sense of connection. In that moment, they weren't mythical beasts. They were just a family seeking shelter from the storm, and she was the one who could provide it. The next morning, the blizzard had passed. The world outside was silent and draped in a stunning, pristine layer of fresh snow. Ilara woke to find the cabin empty. Her guests were gone. For a moment, she wondered if it had all been a dream. But then she noticed something. Her firewood box, which had been nearly empty, was stacked to the brim with perfectly cut, dry logs enough to last her the rest of the winter and then some. She walked to her pantry, and her jaw dropped. The shelves, which she had nearly emptied the night before, were now overflowing. There were piles of wild berries, edible roots, mushrooms, and even a large honeycomb dripping with golden honey. It was a feast, a treasure trove of forest bounty that would keep her fed for months. But the most incredible discovery was outside. Ilara stepped onto her porch and gasped. The deep snow that had buried her path and driveway was completely gone. A wide, clear path had been carved all the way from her front door to the main road miles away. The snow was packed down so neatly it looked like a professional crew had been at work all night. And there, at the edge of the forest, she saw them. The family of Bigfoots stood for a moment, and the large leader turned, gave her a slow, deliberate nod, and then they disappeared back into the trees. Ilara stood there, tears of gratitude streaming down her face. She had offered them warmth and a small meal, and in return they had given her security, sustenance, and a clear path out of isolation. They had repaid her small act of kindness 100 times over. The villagers, when they finally managed to dig themselves out, were stunned to find the path to Ilara's cabin already clear. They couldn't explain it, but Ilara knew. She never told anyone the full story, but from that day on, a quiet understanding existed between her and the mysterious guardians of the forest. Her act of compassion in the face of the unknown had not only saved them, but had also brought an unexpected and beautiful blessing into her own life. It just goes to show you that kindness, no matter who you show it to, always finds a way of coming back to you. What did you think of that story? It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? If you enjoyed this journey into the heartwarming and mysterious, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories that spark the imagination. Don't forget to ring the notification bell so you never miss an update. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.